In the year ahead, Massachusetts will take up the question of physician-assisted suicide. Supporters have collected signatures for a ballot question, but there's also mobilization by opponents and a recent vote in opposition by the Mass Medical Society. Another opponent is with us tonight, an advocate for people with disabilities and founder of the group Second Thoughts. We'd like to welcome John B. Kelly. Thank you very much for being with us, John.
Thank you, Chris, for having me.
John, we've heard of this already framed by supporters as a human rights issue. You've been a kind of a human rights advocate, so how could there be disagreement?
Well, we come at this initiative, which is called the Death with Dignity Initiative, and it would enable people who are determined to be terminally ill with 6 months or left to live to get a suicide potion, basically a lot of barbiturates. And we are opposed because the first thing that we notice is that the people selecting the suicide option in the two states where it's legal, Oregon and Washington, do so not because of some kind of horrible, agonized suffering at the end of life, but the conditions of the life they were leading while being designated terminally ill. And those social reasons, which are what have been dominating the drive for this bill, and that's why the prominence of the word dignity. And basically what we see are people who are so appalled by the quality of their life that they choose suicide in order to maintain some mistaken notion of dignity.
By the way, what I haven't heard you say is that this is about people who are terminally ill and in great pain. Why is that?
Because out in Oregon, only a few % of the people, as reported by the doctors, chose suicide because of pain issues. There have been such dramatic increases in pain management, palliative care, hospice care over the years. And so while this movement addresses a fear in the populace, we think it's a fear that is no longer warranted, and that certainly efforts must be redoubled to improve hospice, improve home care-based options for people so that they don't feel trapped in an abusive relationship or depending on family, feeling like a burden. Everyone should feel welcomed and supported, and we think that the issues around having a terminal illness can be addressed to enable as fulfilling a life as possible until the end that comes without pain.
Now, one of the arguments that I had seen in favor of this kind of law is that it's not about pain, but let's say, what if because of a serious illness, I'm in a situation where I cannot control my bodily functions, pretty much have no mind left to speak of, I'm practically a breathing vegetable, and if it's that bad, shouldn't people have the option to go ahead with something like this?
Well, first of all, people always have the right to refuse treatment. People have a body, and they are responsible for it and have the right to deny any intervention into it, even down to the level of a catheter. Breathing tubes, certainly, a ventilator, all those things can be rejected. People can decline treatment at any time, and palliative care believes, and we believe, that even if pain relief is required that causes sedation at the end of death, at the end of life, that is acceptable. What we do not approve of is saying that certain people have the right to commit suicide in the state of Massachusetts. We'll be saying that, yes, we agree that it's a rational, reasonable decision to kill yourself under these circumstances. And whenever death becomes a benefit, we have to be very, very careful. And as people with disabilities, we are already on the front line of a broken, profit-driven healthcare system, which will naturally see a below $100 prescription as a cheaper alternative to experimental drugs, life-extending drugs. There was a case in Oregon, 2 cases in fact, where people were denied life-extending treatment.
Chemotherapy, I think.
Chemotherapy, yes. Denied life-extending treatment, but offered assisted suicide.
By the way, take me into that other kind of worst case scenario where someone's trying to make a decision, and this is a law that's supposed to have safeguards. So I guess you don't really trust the kind of safeguards that might be written into
Once
this.
the prescription is filled, there are no safeguards. Once the person brings the poison home, and we have a situation, we have to be very concerned about all the things that go on in society. Elder abuse is a common issue, abuse of people with disabilities. An heir, someone who's self-interested, could even be one of the witnesses to the person signing a document saying they want suicide, and there is nothing to prevent them from administering or assisting the administering of it. So we're very concerned about self-interested family or people who are taking care, and we're concerned that so few of the people have been referred for any kind of counseling. Now, as people with disabilities, we understand what it might be like to come into a situation which is traumatic and depressing. But if only 7.5% of the people in Oregon have been referred for even one consultation over all these years, that is obviously a figure way below. And suicide prevention experts say that the request for suicide, even under terminal illness conditions, is a cry for help that can be addressed. Let's address this issue with support and counseling, not a quick and easy prescription.
Flesh this out a little bit, because there are supposed to be safeguards saying that if anyone's going to go ahead with this assisted suicide, they have to be in their right mind and able to really exercise free will. Explain what's going on with that mind at that time that makes you think this is not the right way.
Well, first of all, the proponents of the bill, they approach it as if we are all single individuals acting in a vacuum. But indeed, we're all located in a matrix of family, friends, people who care about us. So many of us can imagine being in a situation in which we feel that it might be our obligation to die to get out of the way for people, especially if finances are being drawn upon, or if the care loads feel too high for family members. What about home care-based solutions? What about earlier hospice rather than too late hospice?
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Chris.
From Second Thoughts, John B. Kelly.